Welcome to the listening section of the TOEFL mock test, brought to you by Spinta. This section measures your ability to understand conversations and lectures in English. In this section, you will listen to several conversations and academic lectures. Each conversation and lecture is followed by a number of questions. You will hear each conversation or lecture only one time. You may take notes while you listen. You may use your notes to help you answer the questions. Some of the questions will replay part of the audio for you. Answer the questions based on what is stated or implied by the speakers. You must answer each question before moving on. You cannot return to previous questions in this section.
Good morning, class. Today we will examine habitat fragmentation and its consequences for biodiversity and ecosystem services. Fragmentation occurs when continuous habitat is broken into smaller, isolated patches by roads, agriculture, or urban development. The result is not only less total habitat, but also increased edge habitat, altered microclimates, and barriers to movement for many species. One important concept is metapopulation dynamics, where local populations occupy discrete patches and persist through a balance of local extinctions and recolonizations. For example, studies in fragmented forests show that small patches often lose species over time unless they are recolonized from nearby patches. A classic case is the Florida panther, which experienced a genetic bottleneck after population fragmentation, requiring careful management to increase connectivity and gene flow. We can also look at the Kirtland's warbler, which depends on a particular successional stage of habitat and is vulnerable if that habitat exists only in tiny isolated stands. Edge effects deserve special attention. At the boundary between habitat and disturbed land light levels, temperature and wind exposure change, favoring generalists and invasive species. These changes reduce suitable interior conditions for forest interior species, leading to declines in nesting success for some birds and altered plant communities. Another important implication is loss of ecosystem services. Fragmentation can reduce pollination levels when pollinators cannot move freely between patches, and this, in turn, affects crop yields in nearby agricultural land. To address fragmentation, conservationists debate reserve design. This debate is often called the S-Losos question, which asks whether a single large reserve or several small reserves are better. A single large reserve benefits species with large home ranges and lowers edge-to-interior ratio, but several small reserves may capture more habitat heterogeneity overall. However, several small reserves only work if there is connectivity between them, or if species have good dispersal abilities. Corridors are one practical tool to enhance connectivity. They are linear strips of habitat that link patches and may allow animals and plants to move through human-dominated landscapes. Corridors can increase movement between patches and reduce local extinctions. Nevertheless, corridors are not a panacea. If corridors also facilitate the spread of diseases, invasive species, or edge effects, they can have unintended negative consequences. A landscape-level approach is therefore necessary. Combining protected areas of various sizes, corridors, and buffer zones often yields the best outcomes for biodiversity and ecosystem services. Finally, I want to emphasize the role of empirical studies and adaptive management. We monitor species abundance, genetic diversity, and ecosystem function to adjust strategies over time. In summary, fragmentation alters ecological processes, reduces services like pollination and carbon storage, and requires thoughtful design of networks of habitat to maintain biodiversity. Next week, we will examine specific corridor design principles and some cost-benefit analyses from recent conservation projects.
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
Corridors can increase movement between patches and reduce local extinctions.
For more TOEFL mock tests as well as IELTS and Cambridge practice, visit www.spinta.org. We provide updated tests every single day, AI feedback for your speaking and writing responses, and access to a wide range of high-quality mock tests to help you prepare with confidence.